Hey everyone, today we have some huge updates in Wrath Classic, including cross-realm queuing, inaccessible Ulduar boss loot, that's a bummer, and even more of a downer, BRIAN BIRMINGHAM. WoW Classic tech lead has been terminated from Blizzard. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get right into it. A new hotfix was implemented just this week to prevent players from using an exploit to essentially get infinite cooldowns like bloodust, runic weapon, all those really powerful cooldowns to be used repeatedly during clearing trash in Ulduar. And the way that guilds would exploit this would be to have a hunter or a mage or a rogue go engage a boss. You know, this was actually something they talked about where they were kind of afraid of people doing. They'd engage a boss, everyone would pop their cooldowns, and then the one player would feign death if they were a hunter, vanish if they were a rogue, go invisible if they were a mage, and that would cause the rest of the raid to exit the raid encounter or the boss encounter and get all their cooldowns back, and they could pop them again for the next trash pull and just repeatedly be clearing trash this way. And you could clearly see this working with, you know, skippable bosses, bosses where they're not like blocking the way in Ulduar, so you can just exploit this. Now, Blizzard has stated that if anyone is going to take part in these types of exploits, they need to be prepared for potential suspensions. They need to be prepared for the stripping away of any potential world first, death, demise titles, etc. Now, if you guys remember, there was a very similar situation with a guild exploiting AQ, and they received the same types of suspensions and you know, losing the loot that they got, etc. Blizzard does not like these types of exploits, and so I would err on the side of caution when doing these types of things when it comes to raids, world first, things like that. Blizzard is pretty serious about it. Okay, moving on to number 2. On January 20th, which was just this week, the Lunar Festival has begun. I would recommend, if you are interested in tackling what it has to offer, check out my video in the description. It's got a full guide for the complete meta achievement. You can get this done really in one day so that you can get that Violet Proto Drake from completing what a long, strange trip it's been. It's going to be a 310 movement speed mount, and it's probably going to be pretty rare if you ask me. Now, next we have cross-realm PvP is now live. This is actually kind of exciting. Now, if you got a friend on a different server, but you've always wanted to queue together, well, now you can. You can literally queue together cross-realm for PvP, which includes arena and battlegrounds. This is huge. I remember back in the day, if you wanted to queue with someone, you know, let's say you wanted to put together a really pro team, you found someone really good, you know, you have to switch to their server so you can queue together as a team, maybe even have to faction change. Well, now you can do that cross-realm PvP queuing for BGs and arenas now live. That is super exciting to me. And guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out. Also added to the game is Emelon the Storm Watcher. He is a new boss in Vault of Archivon who will be dropping tier 8 set pieces as well as the Furious Gladiator pieces. It's going to be a great boss that you're going to want to include in your raid rotation each week. He's in this week. He's not super hard, but he does have a mechanic that can wipe the entire raid when he overloads one of his minions. I have a video for that raid guide in the description. Go ahead, check that out if you are looking to get a full rundown of what that boss does. Not too bad, gives you lots of free loot. Also, Oceanic realms have been added to North American PvP queues. Now, the reason for this is because players on Oceanic realms have stated, and it is evident, that they have very long queues for PvP activities, and so Blizzard has decided to make it possible for them to queue into games with their counterparts in the Americas. This has already happened. PvP queues are going to continue to prioritize players within the same region, but if it can't find a match within a reasonable amount of time, the search will be extended to include players from both Oceanic and America's realms. And this was put into place after arena season rewards were given out. And so the reason for that is because Blizzard needed to keep the two regions leaderboards separate until the final rankings were determined there. I think this is going to be a good change. It's going to mainly benefit those Oceanic realms, but, you know, I think everyone should be able to queue up and play the game if they wanted to play the game. All right, next up we have floating bosses, corpses out of reach of being looted. Now, this seems like something terrible. I actually can't believe that this actually happened, but it makes total sense. Stormcaller Brundier's corpse will no longer get stuck midair if killed during his transition into and out of lightning tendrils. Now, for those of you who don't raid or don't know this mechanic, Stormcaller Brandir, when the other two bosses have been killed in the Assembly of Iron encounter, he starts casting lightning tendrils. He's floating in the air and just shocking everyone. He chooses a random target, chases them, but he's in the air floating, right? And so if you kill him while he is floating in the air, he's just gonna his corpse is gonna chill up there, and that's no good. Which is gonna keep you from getting your loot, which is no fun at all. So that they fixed it. That corpse will no longer get stuck. Thank goodness. There was also a bunch of other hot fixes, including elders being put in the correct places. The sack of Ulduar spoils and large sack of Ulduar spoils will now drop emblems of conquest instead of emblems of triumph, which it should give those emblems of conquest. So lots of good changes made. And now finally, the biggest news of all, BRIAN BIRMINGHAM departs Blizzard. Now this particular change, I think, is well, of course, this is the biggest change of all the news we've gone through, because he is the tech lead for WoW Classic, and the reason for his departure is actually very, very noble. And quite frankly, I think this really makes me like BRIAN BIRMINGHAM quite a lot, because he stood up for what is right. And frankly, that's against Blizzard's culture, so that makes sense why he was fired when you go against the company culture, right? Well, what happened was he was doing reviews for, he's a manager, right? He's a people leader, and he does performance reviews for people who are reporting to him. And he basically was explaining in a series of tweets, and I'll link to his Twitter below if you want to see it from the man himself, but what he was explaining was that he was going to be giving these reviews, and depending on which rank of a review you get, right? There's like developing, there's like excellence in performance, right? You get a different review. Depending on which one you get, it's going to impact how much profit sharing you get. And the worst part about this is that Blizzard's parent company, which is called ABK, and you can see this in his tweets, basically force this onto a bell curve. Now, I talk very briefly about statistics on my channel, but a bell curve means that, you know, the most people fall into average. Some people are above and some people are below, but the bell curve forces some people to be below, right? And it is by the nature of a bell curve, there has to be someone underperforming, there has to be someone overperforming, and then the majority of people fall into average, right? And so because of this bell curve first forced upon this review cycle, BRIAN had to give developing to someone, and he did not believe that someone deserved it. And this would strip them of the profits that he believed that they deserved because they worked on the game. He basically didn't believe in the bell curve. And quite frankly, I do think that this bell curve is a mistake. I think that this bell curve unfairly pits employees against each other because you're essentially in competition with each other. You know, the top performer is under pressure to not overperform because you're making everyone else fall below that person. I think it's a terrible system, quite frankly. But let me just read some of these things from BRIAN just so you guys get a better idea of exactly what he said. Now, BRIAN says, "I wasn't intending to make this public, but apparently it's in the news already, so I want to set the record straight. I am no longer an employee of Blizzard Entertainment, though if I would return if allowed to, so I could fight the stack ranking policy from inside." That's that whole bell curve thing I was talking about, right? The forced stack ranking policy is a directive that came from the ABK level above Mike Ybarra. I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's true. Everyone at Blizzard I've spoken to about this, including my direct supervisors, expressed disappointment in this policy. Here BRIAN says, "ABK is a problematic parent company. They put us under pressure to deliver both expansions early. It is deeply unjust to follow that by depriving employees who work for them their fair share of profit. The ABK team should be ashamed of themselves." BRIAN stood up for his direct report, and because of that, he was terminated. It seems like a very Blizzard thing to do. You know, you try to do the right thing and they get rid of you. Very controversial. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this in the comments section. And again, tons of links in the description if you guys want to learn more about all this. But very sad that BRIAN is gone. And I think BRIAN's a great person for standing up for his direct reports. Yeah, that's the main news. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.